Hi friends, you're welcome. We talked about the three possibilities of a perfect competitive firm in the short run. Um, a perfect competitive firm can make abnormal profits or supernormal profits. It can also break even or make normal profits, and it can make losses, which is also called the subnormal profit. So let's look at the grammatical illustration of these profits. But the first thing I would want you to know is profit is basically revenue minus cost. So if revenue is more than cost, you are making supernormal profit. If revenue is equal to cost, you are making normal profit or you are breaking even. That means you are not making profit, you are not making losses. And if revenue is less than cost, you are making losses or subnormal profits. Now, it is very easy for you to compare with the average revenue. The average revenue is the money you get when you sell one product. So it's very easy for you to compare with average revenue and average cost. Average cost is also the cost you incur in producing one product. Now let's look at how to determine the type of profit on a curve. First of all, you have to look for the equilibrium point. And the equilibrium point is the point at which the marginal cost is equal to the marginal revenue and marginal cost is rising. Now, as you see here, this curve SMC is the short run marginal cost. It starts from here and moves up here. The point at which this marginal cost is equal to the marginal revenue. The marginal revenue is also the same as the price, is the same as the average revenue. It's at this point. So this is the equilibrium point. At the equilibrium point, we need to look for our short run average cost curve. So at the equilibrium point, this is our short run average cost curve, and this is our cost, which is represented with C. So looking at this average cost, we need to look for our average revenue at that point. Our average revenue is also equal to the price, is equal to the marginal revenue. At this point, we realize that our average revenue is greater than our average cost. So this is a firm making supernormal profit, and the profit is the margin, the shaded portion through from this full rectangle is the supernormal profit. There can also be a case where the short run average cost is equal to the average revenue. At that point, a firm operating at such a point is making normal profit. That means the firm is not making profit, is not making loss. Cost is equal to revenue. There can also be a worst case scenario where the cost is higher than the revenue. We trace it from the equilibrium point. This is the equilibrium point. If we trace it upward, the equilibrium point is the point at which marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. And you know, marginal revenue and average revenue for a perfect competitive firm is the same as the price. So this is the point. But what is the cost? We use the short run average cost, and we realize that at this point the short run average cost is higher than the average revenue. So the shaded portion is the losses such a firm is making. Yes. So that is very good to note. There is one thing to note, very important, which is called the shutdown point, and I would use a diagram to explain the shutdown point to you. Every firm incurs two types of costs. We have the fixed cost and we have the variable cost. And since we are talking in averages, I would say we have the average fixed cost and average variable cost. The average fixed cost together with the average variable cost will give us the average total cost. Now, the average fixed cost is the cost incurred on the fixed factor. When you are producing, you have fixed factors and you have variable factors. For instance, if you are operating a factory that is producing soft drinks, your fixed factor is the building itself. Probably you are paying rent. So the rent you pay monthly is your average fixed cost. And your variable factor is what you use to produce the soft drinks. Maybe you use oranges. So that is your variable factor. The cost you incur on the variable factor is your average variable factor. Now, if a firm is not producing at all, it will still be paying rent. So if you are not producing at all, you will still be incurring the average fixed cost, but your average variable cost will be zero. So I'm talking about all these because we are going to arrive at the shutdown point at the end. The shutdown point is the point at which a firm is supposed to make a decision whether to shut down or to continue producing. Now, if you are producing and the money you are getting, you are not making profit and you are making some losses, it is advised that you don't just shut down. You look for your shutdown point to know whether you are below that point before you shut down. Now, what is the shutdown point? The shutdown point is the point at which the average revenue is equal to your average variable cost. The fixed cost, you'll be incurring it monthly, you'll always be incurring it. But if your average variable cost is very, 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 very low and it is equal to your average revenue, that is a shutdown point. It is a shutdown point because if the moment your average variable cost goes above the price or your average revenue, it becomes very unwise to produce. Why? Because the money you are getting, you cannot even pay for the rent to even pay for the factory. So if you can pay for the factory only and you cannot you cannot buy more of the variable factor, you can keep producing. That is sensible. But if you cannot pay for the rent and your average variable cost is also very, very, very high, then it is not good to produce. So basically what I'm saying is that the shutdown point is this point, the point at which the average variable cost is equal to the average revenue. The moment the average variable cost goes above the average revenue, you have to stop producing because your losses are too much. So now let's give more light to it. The firm can minimize losses up to the total fixed cost only by not producing. So if you are not producing, maybe you want to reduce your losses, so you are reducing production. You can reduce production to the point at which your to the point where your cost is just your total fixed cost. When the price is less than the average variable cost, the price is what you get, or is the same as the average revenue. If it is less than your average variable cost, the firm will, that means the money the firm is getting cannot cover the total fixed cost, and it cannot even cover part of the variable cost. If you are operating a firm in such a situation, the firm must shut down. So the point where the price is equal to the average fixed cost is regarded as the shutdown point. The shutdown point is a critical point below which, if the price falls, the firm would have to shut down. Now let me explain it in simple words. If you are operating as a firm, you are expecting to get profit. In other words, your revenue should be greater than your cost. And we are using average revenue and average cost to compare. There is one type of cost, whether you are producing or not, you bear it, which is the average fixed cost. So we don't really use the average fixed cost to compare, but we use the average variable cost. So if your price or your average revenue is lower, the average revenue is the money you are getting as you produce. If it is lower than the cost you are incurring for producing any extra product, then you don't have to produce. But if it is equal to your average variable cost, that is the shutdown point, the point at which you will decide whether to produce or not. If your price is above the average variable cost, it's good news. It means though you are making losses now because the average cost itself is above your price, but your average variable cost is below the price. So though you are making losses now, when you keep producing, maybe in the long run you start breaking even, or making you start breaking even. So the shutdown point is a point that is indicated here, is the point at which average variable cost, which is this curve, is equal to the price or the marginal revenue or the average revenue. At the shutdown point, the firm is still making losses because your total cost, your average total cost, is higher than your price. but because your average variable cost is equal to your average revenue, you can still be producing. But the moment the average variable cost gets above the price, you have to shut down. Let's pause here and continue in the next lesson. Thank you. In the next slide, sorry. Thank you.